Nesse exato momento, o mercado global de soja está sendo redesenhado em tempo real. E o que a gente está acompanhando não é só mais uma disputa comercial, é uma mudança estrutural sobre quem controla a oferta e quem captura uma demanda que define a curva de preços para a próxima década. Enquanto o Brasil amplia a produção e embarca em todas as janelas, a China ela vem reposicionando de uma forma ativa, né, a sua estratégia de compra. Ao mesmo tempo, os Estados Unidos endurece a sua postura comercial, mesmo com a demanda interna sob pressão de logísticas, né, e com margens e risco regulatório. Isso nos leva a um ponto crucial dessa conversa. E nesse exato momento, o mercado global de soja está sendo, obviamente, né, o ponto da nossa discussão. Tá? Então, para colocar esse cenário em perspectiva global, eu estou aqui com o Daniel Basse, Dan, para quem já conhece ele há mais tempo, o nosso presidente aqui da AgResource Company, para trazer, obviamente, uma leitura direta aí dos Estados Unidos e do mercado internacional. Dan, with China reshaping its buying strategy and the US tightening its trade stance, how do you see US domestic soybean demand holding up, and what kind of price risks does this create? Also, in short term, could this confrontation accelerate a lasting shift in global sourcing? Do you think that moving demand away from US and further consolidating South America, especially Brazil, as the key supplier? And also, do you think that we will see South America connecting maybe just a little exports of 24-25 with the 25-26 season?
Well, thank you, Raphael. It's good to be with everybody. And I just wanted to go through some slides maybe I put here. I'm not, Raphael, I'm not optimistic that the U.S. and China will be able to get a trade deal. I just worry that rare earths and now the vessel tax that both sides are putting on, along with TikTok, which has still not been approved, which along with a host of other issues are open there. And the hostilities from the Chinese are much bigger than what we saw in the three prior meetings in Madrid and Stockholm and Geneva. So when you think about where the Chinese are today, they are not buying U.S. soybeans. Now, remember back that if you look at this graphic here, you can see that today the U.S. soybean export sales are relatively low. The USDA is closed, so we don't have data on a lot of this stuff. But you can understand and you can look here and see that from now, China's not bought any U.S. soybeans. This is because China has a 34% tariff on U.S. soybeans or any grain that comes into their country. That equates to about $2.60 a bushel, which is a lot of money. So the opportunity for the United States to sell soybeans to China, at least with this tariff today, is non-existent. Now, will China do something in the future? Well, it's possible, but I'm doubtful because I think all of these other issues that are there today are going to be more important. If you think about when China really buys U.S. soybeans, you can see here, it's really in this time frame from October, November, and December. If the United States is not exporting soybeans, this is the graph in your left, you can see that in other months, it tends to be relatively minor. The chart on the right is when you and Brazil take over. And so you can see February, March, April. I mean, those are your big months. I'm hopeful this year you can do a little business in January also. But this is that gap today that maybe the United States would or somebody will have to fill. So we estimate from December to January, China has needs of importing somewhere between 6 and 7 million tons. Now, China has a large amount of reserves, so maybe they can do that internally. But I'm not optimistic that those beans are going to be coming from the United States. Another thing I wanted to point out to everybody in Brazil is China has just finished some real important trials in terms of using genetically modified soybean seeds or other seeds. So we in the United States or you in Brazil use GM corn and soybean and sometimes other grain seeds all the time. This is a graph showing you that with test plot data now coming in from this harvest, we can see that these seeds, GM seeds, produce a substantially higher yield within China. So I guess the message I'm trying to say is on things like corn or maybe rice or wheat, China will be self-sufficient in the not too distant future. They will still need to import soybeans, but I'm not seeing China as a growth market anymore for additionality of soybeans. You may see some shifting between the United States and Brazil, depending on price. But other than that, I think the Chinese are going to be taking, let's say, somewhere between 100 and 105 million tons of soybeans almost each and every year. You and Brazil continue to expand more and more in terms of planted and harvested acreage, in terms of crush and exports. This graph shows it very aptly right now. So with that in mind, China can secure all of their soybean needs from you. Let's call it 100 million metric tons annually, which still would leave some additionality for other suppliers or other importers, but it also could fill your crush rate somewhere around 55 million metric tons. So I think Brazil is in a different position today than when the United States had a trade war with China back in 2018 and 2019. And that's important to fully understand that, if the Chinese come back to buy US soybeans, I don't think it happens until maybe the June, July, or August timeframe. We call it the fourth quarter of our crop year. So not optimistic, at least until that timeframe, that China will buy U.S. soybeans. This leaves the soybean market in this broad range that we've been enjoying for much of the last year. Notice that soybeans in Chicago have been stuck really between 1075 and 950 a bushel. If China does not buy U.S. soybeans, we're likely to drop back to 950 or 940 a bushel and check out this support again. So these meetings coming up in roughly 2 weeks between Presidents Trump and Xi will be very important to decide the next directional move in the soybean market. Lastly, here's a graph showing you the importance of a trade war. The last time the United States had a trade war was back in 2018 and 19. Notice how U.S. soybean exports really declined in this time. So again, we are expecting that the United States has already lost somewhere around 13 million metric tons of soybean demand that you and Argentina have filled in that September, October, November, at least the first week of September timeframe. So again, a very slow start. The United States usually reaches its export peak in soybeans somewhere between the middle of October, to the first part of November. So again, the peak is going to be much, much lower this year than we've seen in prior years. Lastly, here's what China has above the United States and many countries in the Western world. This is rare earth minerals. This is what the United States will really focus on. We need these rare earth metals if we're going to continue producing weapons, if we're going to see our auto industry and our computer industries doing well. This is what's so important to the United States. So our Achilles heel, if you will, is rare earth minerals and what it really means going forward. But I wanted you to be aware that China and Brazil, both combined, you have the vast majority of the world's rare earth minerals. Every other country thereafter, including the United States, only has very modest amounts. So Brazil and China control the rare earth minerals of the world. With that in mind, the market really knows, and I say that only because if I look at corn futures or soybean futures looking out for the next 3 years, CZ26 is December corn or new crop corn in the United States, looking outwards to 2026, then 27 or 28. We have 3 crop years here represented. Notice that these prices are at the same level as really the production costs within Brazil and the United States. And so when I say the market knows, it knows not to get prices too high because it doesn't need to bring acres back into production. The other thing a Brazilian farmer should understand is that there's a new program this year for the United States farmer in which farmers are guaranteed these prices from the U.S. government. $6.35 in wheat, $4.42 in corn, $10.72 in soybeans. These are prices that U.S. farmers will get. So they average the price, take 85% of your average yield, and then they multiply it times this price. And if you're below it, you will get a check from the U.S. government in the month after your crop year. In the case of corn and soybeans, that would be a year from now. So all in all, Raphael, I'm not optimistic on a trade deal. I believe that really, as you think about where things are looking at for the American farmer, we're going to be losing China, at least going forward, because the Trump administration will be most focused on rare earth minerals, not on soybeans. And with that in mind, on the agenda next week or in a couple of weeks, soybeans fall to the bottom, and it doesn't look like China or the United States will change their tariffs that allows the United States to export any size or substance to China until maybe next July or August.
Bom, Daniel Basse, thank you for sharing your direct U.S. perspective, having your insights direct from Chicago is strategic in this moment of geopolitical recalibration. Let's hope this dispute moves towards a resolution sooner rather than later, and with the minimal possible market disruption. But as you stand out, and we're going to have several movements and several changes, right?
No, it will be changing, Raphael, and the big change is that the United States will be losing. We'll see our end stock swelling to over 500 million bushels, and with that, price has declined, or price risk to the downside in the Chicago and U.S. markets. But on the other side of this is Brazil. Brazil sells more soybeans to the Chinese, and so at some point in the next couple of months, I need to have the Brazilian FOB price levels from Paranaguá or your northern arc get above the U.S. Gulf, so we can capture some of that business that the Brazilian farmer can't fill. So it's a good day for Brazil. The unfortunate side of this is going to be the United States farmer.
E para quem está nos acompanhando, fica o alerta, né? A disputa, né? Por demanda já mudou de endereço, como o próprio Dan trouxe. O Brasil pode não ficar mais só precificando, olhando para Chicago. Obviamente, a gente começa, né, a ter um papel mais importante ainda. Se você quiser continuar recebendo essas análises exclusivas, comparativas entre as origens, leitura geopolítica aplicada ao mercado, é só apontar a câmera para o banner aqui na tela e entrar na nossa lista aí de clientes seletos. Né? As próximas atualizações já estão no gatilho. A gente vai se ver na próxima, com certeza, trazendo para vocês a melhor estratégia, a melhor inteligência. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for these precious insights. Thank you very much.